The main thing about chapter 3 is it talks about energy. Energy is the capacity to do work or to produce change. Energy is present everywhere in our universe and exists in different forms, but it is neither created nor destroyed. It simply converts to another form. Examples of energy include kinetic, this is a kind of movement, potential energy, thermal energy, that heat, gravitational energy, energy given just by a gravitational position, elastic energy, electromagnetic energy, chemical, nuclear, and mass. So if we seem to lose it in one area, we actually don't. It just switches to another one of those forms. Two that we care about are potential energy and kinetic energy. Potential energy is the energy of position or stored energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. Your body is an expert at utilizing potential and kinetic energy to the best of its ability. This dam is a wonderful illustration of both potential and kinetic. Potential energy is present in the water above a dam. It has energy of position, or it's stored energy if that dam is closed. The very fact that it has the ability to move is going to be a big part. When we open that dam, it begins to move. Now we're producing kinetic energy. We use this property to produce electric energy. We'll have turbines that are being spun by the water as it flows down, producing and storing electric energy. So we're transferring that energy from one to the other. All of our cells use energy to do work. The work is muscle contractions, powering the neurons in your brain, providing heat for your body. The energy that we use comes from our food. It's stored in biomolecules like sugars and lipids, and when these molecules are oxidized by cellular respiration inside of your cells, it releases energy. In our cells, the energy carrier molecule, ATP, supplies that energy for cellular processes. The entire process is going to work like this. You're hungry. You've been studying for the last couple of hours and you're ready for a snack. Your body has been powering the neurons, has been keeping your body hot. Your muscle contractions have improved your posture and kept your back straight, not slouched. Yes, I know. So all of that hard work that you've been doing, you need to replenish that energy in your body. So you grab a candy bar. That candy bar has sugars and lipids in it. And the sugars and lipids are broken down into their simplest form by the digestive system, and they're eventually carried through the blood to your individual tissue cells. Once they enter the cells, we're going to do a process called cellular respiration to release energy. This is basically where we burn the bonds between those molecules. This is kind of why you need to have oxygen. You need oxygen to allow for that burning of the bonds, which releases the energy inside of them. We can take that energy and store it in a form called ATP that we mentioned before. It supplies energy for those cellular processes, but allows us to store it for a while. Now that you've had that nice candy bar, you are energized, your body once again has that nutrients, and now you're all excited to keep studying. We may need to explain that potential energy a little more. Potential energy is exhibited in cells of living organisms when a concentration gradient exists across the plasma membrane. Let's look at this in a picture. I think it kind of helps. This plasma membrane is dividing the inside of a cell from the outside of a cell. We know that with the plasma membrane, those hydrophobic tails are all on the inside and they're preventing any water or anything from crossing because they hate the water, very hydrophobic. But there are specialized proteins called transport proteins that are embedded in the plasma membrane to allow certain substances to move across. Outside of the cell, we might see a much higher concentration of sodium ions. Each purple circle represents a sodium ion, and we kind of get the feeling there's a lot more on the outside of the cell than there is on the inside of the cell. There's a low concentration of sodium ions on the inside. Since proteins can close and stop this movement of the sodium ions, it's possible to allow a much higher positive charge to develop on the outside of the cell than on the inside. The greater you can get that concentration gradient to be between the high and the low, the more like a dam it is when you finally open that channel and all of that high concentration sodium rushes into the cell. That's going to change the charge of that area. And this potential energy is just waiting to be released across the dam. That is potential energy. It's like an arrow that is in a bow and it's strung, but you're not releasing it yet. It's been stretched, so it's ready to go, but there's no movement. The kinetic energy is what happens when you release that energy, you open the protein and allow all of that sodium to travel into the cell. Potential energy is also present in the high energy shell of an atom. An electron that is in the outermost shell has a much higher energy level than those in the next ring in and the ring closest to the nucleus. The low energy shell will be the innermost, and the higher energy shell will be the outermost. If we take that electron and bounce it down to the next shell and down to the next one, it's losing energy. It's letting that energy out. So electrons have the high energy shells have that potential energy. As they fall through each shell, they're losing it. They're producing kinetic energy though. That energy is that loosed arrow that can be used by someone. Let's find out who. Molecules are specialized to take that high energy of that atom and pull off that outermost electron. It can then travel to a different molecule and have another one of those outer electrons pulled off. Another molecule, have another one of those electrons pulled off. And as it has gone down the steps, so to speak, it has lost energy, but that energy was utilized by each of these different molecules, eventually leaving us with a low energy state electron. And that concludes chapter 3. In the next few chapters, we're going to get bigger. We're going to be on cells for chapter 4 and tissues for chapter 5. And by the time we get to the integument, we'll be ready for those entire organ systems.